How you doing? I'm Dave Langston, Western State Sportsman and Outdoor Show. We're actually filming a show live, so you guys don't be nervous. I'll be the one that's nervous for you. We're going to be filming for My Outdoor TV and Exxon TV, and we're actually going around and we are filming the whole I.S.E. And interviewing all the different people here. But how many of you guys have got to fish in Idaho before? Where have you fished at? The Island Park area. It's a pretty area up there. It really is. And you? Island Park. Everybody goes to Island Park. Yeah, it's really pretty up there. And you used to live there? Yeah, and I'm from Pocatello, so I kind of have best of both worlds, kind of centered to where I can go up there for the weekend and go wherever I want. But we're actually going to talk about opportunities to fish in Idaho. We've got, there's been so many different records broken in just the past few years. Last year we had the German brown record broke in Ashton. It was about a 27-pound German brown. A gentleman caught it on a worm and a bobber over at Ashton Reservoir. Fish and Game had no idea there was a fish in there that big, and sure enough, he was all over the front page. Northern pike record got broke the past couple years up in Coeur d'Alene. It was about a 25, 26-pound northern. Then we also had the walleye record broken, and that was broken over at Salmon Creek Falls, about a 17-pound walleye. And then the smallmouth bass record, it was broke, and that was over in northern Idaho also. But we're going to get going about showing you some of the places to go fishing for warm water and cold water fish. And we're going to concentrate on southeast Idaho because that's the closest to Utah. Idaho holds almost every species of fish. They've got, like I said, walleye, northern pike, perch, catfish, bass, on and on, steelhead. We've got sturgeon there. Northern pike, tiger muskie. Winder Reservoir, that is just right over the border in Preston. Winder, these boys, actually, I was here last year. I got home, and these boys were in my front yard, and they know my daughters. Go figure. They were at my house, and they said, "Mr. Langston, look at the fish we got." And I'm like, "Well, what do you got?" And they said, "We have some big largemouth bass." "Where'd you catch these bass at, and how long have they been frozen? Because you don't catch bass in March in Idaho." It was warm, about 60 degrees here last year. The one in the middle, that bass was about 7 pounds, and the other ones were 3 and 4 pounds. We went over to Winder Reservoir, and we found out that this little reservoir where there's no boats allowed, it's a float tube only. You can't even have canoes in there, so no rubber rafts, float tubes only. It's loaded with big bass that people just do not go after because they can't get their boat in. So for float tubers, bank fishermen, it's a perfect reservoir to go to. It's over by Preston. Yeah, there's Twin Lakes. Are you familiar with that area? Right across the street from Twin Lakes is Preston, Idaho. I mean, Winder Reservoir. It's about 16 miles north of Preston. It also has bluegill, perch, and there are trout in it. Fish and Game keeps it stocked with trout. Deep Creek Reservoir and Devil's Creek Reservoir. That is, you're probably pretty familiar where Deep Creek and Devil's Creek is. Devil's Creek's on the summit of Malad. Devil's Creek is actually, they didn't stock it with largemouth bass, Fish and Game. It was kind of a bucket biology by somebody. They decided they wanted to put largemouth in there, and now they have taken over the lake. So Fish and Game this year has opened that up to a family fishery. That means you can bring the kids down. I went there last year quite a few times. Couldn't keep the bass off my line. Didn't matter really what you threw, and they were probably the hardest fighting largemouth, even though they haven't grown very large. They're averaging right around 13, 14 inches. But they have pulled out some, Fish and Game has pulled out some that run about 17 inches in there. But they've turned it into a family fishery, have some of the regulations up here, and there's also an Idaho Fish and Game booth in the front up there. The family fisheries, what they do is they provide an area for the kids to go. There's no size limit, but they do have restrictions as to how many. It still has the harvest limit, 6 fish. Also, Deep Creek, that was killed off probably 3 or 4 years ago. We have been told that there's bass back in there. Don't really know the size of the bass in there, but it is full of rainbows, cutthroats, and kokanee. And Devil's Creek is also has kokanee and trout in there. Deep Creek? Deep Creek is, as you're going to Malad, you will actually get off on the Malad exit going heading west. Instead of going into the town of Malad, heading east, you'll head east. And there'll be Weston Reservoir, which is full of bass, and then there will be Deep Creek Reservoir. Condi Reservoir, that's over by Grace, Idaho. That is a trophy-only water. Any largemouth bass taken out of there has to be 20 inches or better, and it's limited to. You can go in there and all day long, and you can catch. They're actually dying of old age. I've talked to Fish and Game. We've had lots of talks in the past. They're actually thinking of dropping the size restrictions because the bass are dying of old age. It takes in Idaho a good year for a bass is 2 inches. That's a really good year. They usually normally grow about an inch a year. So for a 20-inch bass, you're looking at a 15-year-old fish, and they're just dying. They're finding them, the big ones just dead. Also in there, they have tiger muskie. Last year we saw 3 tiger muskie in there, 2 that went over 36 inches and 1 that was under 36. There's also bluegill, perch, and there's rainbow trout in there. That again is also like I said, Condi is a trophy-only fishery, so you have to abide by the regulations. You can pick those up from Fish and Game. Condi is really meant for fishermen. There isn't any water skiers that really go there. Unlike, at Condi, it's looking good. It's looking good this year. Last year, it was really low. I went over there. We couldn't get the boat in. We normally camp right there at the dock, stay there for the weekend. We couldn't even get the boat in. They did hold over some water. They didn't lose it. So, a lot of our reservoirs got really low. Winder, we actually thought we were going to lose. They didn't lose it. It held a small pull. And then Glendale kind of does the same thing all year long. The farmers have the first right to the water, and for the agricultural purposes. Twin Lakes, that is my favorite fishery. I had to write an article for ESPN Outdoors. Actually, I'm in the process of writing it. It's due Monday, so I'm going to be running around between this and that, doing that. I picked Twin Lakes as the #1 bass lake in southeast Idaho. The reason why, last year we had a young boy pulled out a 7.5-pound largemouth. There was about 10 years ago, there was a gentleman that pulled out a 12-pounder. Would have been the state record by 2 pounds. He ate it. Again, Twin Lakes is a family fishery. There's no size restrictions on bass. You can bring the kids in there. You can catch bluegill. There's no limit on the bluegill. The bluegill are running as big as my hand or bigger. Last year we pulled out one that was just over a pound, so it was about like that big. And that's on a consistent basis they're that big. It's not like you go in there and you catch these little dinks. On a consistent basis, if you have a boat, you can bring a kid out and just set it. Actually, in the mornings, you can see the bluegill working the surface. It looks like somebody turned on the stove and the water's just boiling. So you can take the kids out there, you can sit there, you can catch 50, you can catch 100 bluegill, as many as you want to clean, and they're all about like that big. Twin Lakes is by Preston, Idaho. On the maps, the Fish and Game maps, you'll be able to see 16 miles north of Preston. Right across the street from Twin Lakes is Winder Reservoir, so you can hit both of them in one day. We went there, it was about 2 weeks ago, we did an ice fishing show there. We were pulling nothing but perch through the ice. That's all we caught all day long. They were all ranging anywhere from dinks up to about like that big. So there was some really good perch fishing in there. They also have crappie in there. That again was bucket biology. Somebody brought crappie, put them in there, and they're doing very well. It's a really good warm water lake to go to bring the kids to, or for you to also go out and just have a good day on the water knowing you're going to catch fish. This isn't a fishery where you're going to get skunked. If you get skunked, you better just maybe break your rod. I don't know, because it's that good. What's that? Give it up. Yeah, it is that good.